All right, so this is Livestream, author Livestream. This is a totally different thing than really anything I've done, but I'm going to be dedicating a lot of time to getting my second book up and running, and I just figured it doesn't take a lot much more effort for me to bring you guys along for the ride, and so I'm going to try to do that, as much as it's possible without spoiling all the parts of the second book that I'm going to be writing. So in case you didn't know, I've been working on authorship. Last year I published this book called The Imperfect Church. It's a novel that specifically talks about lessons for the modern church. So it's one of these books where you read it, it's kind of a page turner, you enjoy it, and by the end you've learned a lot of very helpful practical stuff. So I'm beginning the second book in the series, which is going to be called The Imperfect Church as well. I want to just show you, though, real quick. This was my process for preparing to write the book, and that's what we're going to be launching into this evening, is kind of the preparatory work of writing a book. So here, some of this stuff got added in later on, but this was really how I plotted out the book, because it's kind of a complicated book. I'll try not, again, to spoil too much. If you haven't read the first book, you really should. It's very interesting. But, I'm plotting out all these different people, essentially, who would be main characters and supplementary characters in the book, and then plotting out the different chapters of the book. So as you can see here, I've a chapter that's platforms that represent our opportunity and outcomes with regards to ministry. I have a chapter called The Best Pastor in the World, or section, The Best Pastor in the World. I wanted to cover this idea of what actually makes a pastor really excellent, because the main character had a misconception about that. What's the deepest worship look like in church? Again, the pastor had a misconception about that. And I have these attached questions. How do you actually foster this in our congregation? Would be the question the pastor is asking and he needs to answer. I ended up cutting this section here, worship in a third world country, not because I didn't think it was helpful and that it wouldn't be good, but because it was going to take so much research, and it kind of would have been a detour from why I'm writing these books. Prison worship service to show vulnerability. I actually went a little bit of a different direction with this as I was writing it. And then a chapter on speaking on controversial topics. And then finally, painting with over-specified instruction versus freedom. And so all this is meant to essentially be this plot map where, as I was writing, I was checking off the sections and making them green. Like you can see here, these ones are green. This one was black because I hadn't finished it. At some point, I just got into hustle mode and stopped actually checking them off. Obviously, the book is published, so I could, make all of these here green. I'm going to have to remember how to do some of this. Yeah, go like that. So we can make all that green. But, this was incredibly helpful as I was writing the book. Having an in-depth plot map that was able to kind of help me navigate what this looks like, incredibly helpful. By the way, if you're joining the live stream, thank you so much for joining. If you're watching this after the fact, awesome as well. Feel free to drop a comment and just let me know if you're here, so that we can interact and engage. And maybe you can give me some ideas and some help too if you're joining me with this book. I'd love input. So we're starting with this much simpler, less well fleshed out plot map. This second book, I'm thinking, is going to be specifically lessons for churches that are stuck in a small state because of various unhealth. Now, I guess it'd be important to acknowledge, and I don't know exactly how I would put this in here, but we'll go like this. I think it'd be important to acknowledge being a small church doesn't equal being an unhealthy church. And, if you read the last book, that would make abundant sense. The last church, he was putting in place all these healthy things, all these revelations that he was getting from this messenger that were good, and that was making the church actually shrink. So being a small church doesn't equal being an unhealthy church. And of course, we left a huge cliffhanger at the end of the last book of what actually happens to the main character. What's he going to go on to? Likewise, I think another important thing that we're going to draw out is being a small church doesn't mean that you've fought the right battles. You might have negative things holding you back as a congregation. So I think this is going to be a tension in this book. I wouldn't want someone to walk away with the idea that, being a small church is wrong. Just like with the last book, I didn't want people to walk away with the idea that being a big church is bad. It's not about this. But still, there are problems that accompany big churches that need to be addressed. And there are problems that might accompany small churches that need to be addressed. So here's kind of what I've been thinking about so far. Number one, don't do everything. Do a small amount of things with everything you have. Yeah, so I guess, with this, I'm thinking about so many churches I've been a part of or I've known where they have a program for everything. In addition to this, they, are giving to lots of different things. And I'll say giving resources, because this would be time, energy, it could be whatever. Giving resources to lots of different things. And I would say they haven't identified what is most important. So these are the kind of defining characteristics that I've seen with churches like this. They have a program for, not really everything, but almost everything. They are giving resources to lots of different things, and then they haven't identified what's actually the most important. And I think here there's a premise, like an unstated premise. We want to state these premises in the brainstorming process. The unstated premise here, which will go like this, add card. We're going to put this in premise. The unstated premise, like this, is, I want to say this as concisely, oh, no signal. I guess my camera died. I need to let it charge here. Let me pop a new battery in. Give me just one moment. One moment here. All right. Getting a new battery in. Sorry about that. I had a shoot. Flip out my window here too. I had a shoot a few days ago, and there we go. Yeah, I never actually changed the battery afterwards. That's on me. By the way, if you're popping in, if you're with me here, tell me, can you see me? Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Would be very, very helpful and appreciative, because this live streaming thing is new to me. Okay, I think we're working good now. Okay, let's get back into this. So, yeah. I want to make sure I'm stating my premises in as simple of a way as I can. A premise is only, like a big, main, huge concept is only really helpful if it's stated with simplicity. So I'll start, and then I might have to refine this. So I guess the concept behind this is that doing good things with doing good things with doing good things with weakness isn't very helpful. And even this, I feel like that's kind of assumed in the statement. I guess, like, the premise behind this is that a church that, you know, let's say they have a children's ministry, they have a youth ministry, they have, you know, a ministry to the elderly, they have a worship ministry, they have a missions ministry, they have outreach ministry, they have all these different piece parts blown out. But let's say this church has really spread their resources thin. So the youth ministry doesn't have, you know, a healthy, well-defined budget. The kids ministry doesn't have what they need in terms of like a healthy, well-defined budget, the resources, personnel they need. Maybe even the volunteers, right? Because each church has a limited number of people who are able to volunteer and plug in to do the work of the church. At least, especially small churches, there's a very limited number that you can even draw on. So let's say, you know, you had 70% of people in your church serving, which would be a great percentage, I would think. You know, if you're a church of 100, you just have a limited number of people. If you're a church of 50, you have a very limited number of people. So if we have 20 different, you know, areas that we're pouring our time and our resources into, what that's going to mean is that each thing we do doesn't have what it needs. That seems solid. You do won't thrive because no one thing has what it truly needs. That lands. That's helpful. Each thing you do won't thrive because no one thing has what it truly needs. I have been a part of churches like this. I've attended churches like this. I've worked at churches like this. The idea here is that it would be better, and I'd even say this in some of these church contexts, like as a youth pastor who was relying on the contribution of, you know, the church's leadership team to pay my salary. I would even say it would be better for the church to identify one or two things to really go all in on and fire me if the youth ministry wasn't one of those things, than it would be for the church to kind of continue on as it is, because I don't have what I need as far as a budget. It'd be great if we were really going to go all in on youth ministry. We'd bring in one more staff person. We'd hire interns. You know, we would put a lot more of our volunteers in. We'd have a effort from the church leadership to make that happen, not just from, you know, me. So anyways, even when it didn't benefit me, I could get excited about a church that decided to do this, and I wasn't a part of the picture. That's how much I really believe in this point. So this, I think, is going to be a major part of the book. When the main character is working with this church and is able to identify this in the church, he's probably going to meet resistance, I'm thinking, and you know, there's going to be the demonstration of what it looks like for the church to actually do this. It's going to look radical, and I think the reason this doesn't happen, maybe I should put a boundary on this here, group this. So, yeah, I guess I'll just put A for now because I don't know the order of this yet. By the way, if you are popping into the live stream, would love for you to just drop a comment so I can see if it's even working. Thanks for joining, and give me some ideas. We're working on brainstorming for my second book release. This is the first one right here, called The Imperfect Church. We're working on the second one. So I think, where were we? I want to link a scripture in here. So we're going to add note from Vault. it's Acts 6. I think it was Acts 6:1, right? Let me check. Let me pull this up where you can actually see what I'm working on here. So we're in Logos. 6:1. So this seems like an important text here, which is basically in the early church, there was this need to do a thing in the early church. There were so many people. They had so many resources. They weren't starved for resources like the churches we're talking about. And you can actually see here, the 12 came to the conclusion right here, it would not be right for us to neglect the ministry of the word of God in order to wait on tables. Brothers and sisters, choose 7 men from among you who are known to be full of the Spirit and wisdom. We'll turn this responsibility over to them, and we will support them in prayer and give our attention to the ministry of the word. So these disciples, the apostles, they identified this in them. So we're gonna make sure to put this into the vault here. They're ready. All right, guys, if you're with me, I will be right back. Enjoy this this music. I'm gonna pray with my kids. Sorry about that. Tonight I like to pray with the kids as they go down for bed. So yeah, we're looking at this. This passage would be significant. So let's do it like this. I'm going to put this off to the side. I'll kind of show you what I do when I'm working with a text over here with my Obsidian. Obsidian is the software I'm using here, by the way. It is one of the biggest game changers I've ever had in my entire life, using Obsidian. So we're going to be creating some notes here. We're going to go Acts, I do lowercase for these, so Acts 6:1. And this hasn't been created yet, although I've tagged it before. So I'm going to put in my Bible here, and then I'm going to copy over from BSB here. Since I'm not doing intensive work with this, I am not going to include the Greek or anything like that. I like to do that if I'm preaching on a text. I will pull in all my text just like this. As I'm reading commentaries, I'm doing notes in here. Basically, the idea is that at the end of my life, this work that I'm doing just in my daily study of scripture is something that could be turned into like a massive work, not just for like other people, but I mean, honestly, mainly for my kids. They'll have access to this Obsidian vault when I die, and it'll have all my notes and my thoughts on scriptures. So yeah, this is kind of how I do that. If I'm wanting to, I pasted the wrong thing in here. It's hard to talk and do something at the same time. All right, here we go. For some reason, when I do, Okay, for some reason when I do OBS, my mouse lags. So it kind of makes this sort of stuff. What in the world? Oh yeah, I have a video in here. I don't know why it pulled up for that. Oh, that's why. 6, 4. I guess it has 6 and 4. So we'll go like this. That was weird. I used that video when I was teaching a youth lesson once. It's the video of Trump referring to people from other countries as animals. It's not okay. I do like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing from the Trump administration. I'll just put that out there, get flame from it, from you guys. Oh, there's my wife commenting. I love you too, sweetie. Thank you. She's probably in the other room watching. Can you hear me okay? If you're listening, are you able to hear me okay? Are you able to see everything okay? How is that? Okay, let's put this back into full screen here. We've got that. Now, I do want to, essentially go like this. And yeah, like I'll put this right here. Just like that, that's fine. Yeah, I think the one other note that I need here, the one other element is right here, which I just, I don't want to forget this. Let's go like this. Doing this will look radical. Yeah, the music is meant to be on. Since it's kind of an author live stream, I guess the idea is that, some of the time I probably just wouldn't be talking. And so I would like, the music to be soothing. I don't know, just like chill with me while we work on this book. That's kind of the, I guess, vision behind it. That's why the music is still on. Is the music too loud? I can turn it down. And then I'm able to listen to music too. So yeah, this is looking good to me. Cool. And I think maybe the tag on this then, we can link that in right here. Let's make this be do few hard. Just, obviously that's not going to be the name of a chapter or something like that. But yeah, we want to do few hard is the idea. Let's move all this up. We have a kind of first section. Or at least some of the beginning thoughts of a first section. My hope is today to get through these other ones and then maybe see if there's other ones that pop into head. So, okay, this one here, we want to plan for how a visitor becomes an elder. So let's unpack that here. I think a lot of churches, a lot of congregations, essentially don't have a clear-cut understanding for how someone who is completely uninvolved in the church, let's even say is not at all a believer, we would call a baby in the faith, like Thessalonians says. How does someone like this become the highest role of authority in the church? If we don't have systems and plans in place to make that happen, what I would put forward is that creates a negative church environment where someone who comes and begins can never imagine to aspire to a role like that. In my thinking, you kind of want everyone in the church to be going, I want to be at a place someday where I could become an elder in this church. You want all the men in the church to have that. You want the women in the church to be going, what does it look like for me to become a spiritual leader in this church and become a deaconess in the church. So you want everyone in the church to kind of have these aspirations to higher roles of leadership in the church. And if you don't have an intentional plan for how that happens, then I think you are letting people fall through the cracks, because some people, if they're not able to imagine that, are never going to feel like they are really invited to have a seat at the table in the church. That's kind of my articulation of this concept. So let's kind of flesh this out a little bit. We need to spell what this looks like. I think essentially, so I'd say people become leaders through happenstance or through development. Let me zoom in here. You can't see my screen. Okay, let's go like that. Zoom in over here. People become leaders right here through happenstance or through development outside church, which is, I mean, we do want people developing outside of church, but we want people developing inside the church for positions of leadership and authority inside the church, if that makes sense. Let's say that. Whoops. Go with this. Put that as a quote. We want church leaders developing within the church. I think this is a biblical model of eldership, which, spoiler alert, lots of churches don't have biblical models of eldership. Lots of congregations just kind of do their own thing or aren't building and instilling leaders. I think a lot of congregations also have too stringent of requirements, like, oh, this person hasn't been here for 40 years, they can't be an elder. Well, I believe there are people who were instated into eldership positions. I mean, based on the timeline, right, just in the book of Acts, there were people who were instated into leadership positions in the church within years of conversion. So now the only way that happens is that they had plans and systems in place for developing leaders. They went way harder all in on Christianity than most of us do in our day-to-day lives. And so someone could go from atheist or someone who's maybe kind of a stagnant Jew to all-in spiritual leader of the church within a matter of years. So I think that's one thing. So again, churches that don't do this, I think some people kind of intangibly feel that they don't have a seat at the table of leadership. I think that would be a church that isn't planning for this, that's just kind of letting things come by happenstance. They're going to do this for certain types of people. And then I think the other thing is, I think membership. There's like an in-group in churches that don't do this. The in-group is people who've kind of been there their whole life. They know their position and their status because they kind of were founding members, if you will, or a founding family. But because there's not a clear track and plan for someone to become, because before elder, it's church member. Before church member, it's like someone who's aligned with beliefs of the church. After church member, it's someone who is, discovering what their calling is within the church and the spiritual gifts that God is equipping them with. So I think a church that doesn't do this well is likely to have kind of an in-group mentality based off things other than spiritual merit. Because we would say, as Christians, we're yanking passages out of context if we just say, don't judge, right? I think Paul was judging believers. I think the directions in Titus and in other places in the New Testament for how you determine and put elders in place requires judgment. And that judgment would have been based on relevant traits that could all be under the kind of umbrella of spiritual merit, or like spiritual maturity. Yeah, merit's probably not the right word. It's probably maturity. By the way, if you're with me, I see I got a few people in the live stream. Thanks for joining. Drop a comment. We're working on brainstorming for my second book right now. And so we're talking about things that make a small church unhealthy, because that's what the second book is going to address, is small church problems. Yeah, spiritual merit probably isn't the right word here. It might be something like spiritual maturity. So there probably should be some sort of, I mean, it's not exactly in group, but a group of people within the church who you would say are fully embodying, you know, the places that God is calling him into as far as spiritual maturity. Those are the people that are going to be called into higher leadership roles in the church. But without a plan for how a visitor becomes an elder, I think oftentimes that same vehicle that's meant to be within the church ends up just becoming, well, this family's been here for 40 years. Or it's this family has, you know, served here and founded the church. Or this person gives a lot of money. So I'd say like those things would be duration at church, financial, I'd say political influence. So then you kind of end up getting this in mentality that is not what it was meant to be with regards to spiritual maturity and the fruit of the Spirit. Or even in Colossians when it talks about all these positive traits, Colossians 3. Let's take a look at this here. Now, nothing in Colossians 3, I think, is going to say that this forms a class of people. And I'm not saying it forms a class of people who are higher, but it says this: since you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on the things above. Whoops, let's take away that highlight. For some reason it highlighted. Let me, yep, we're going to delete that. Here it is, I think. Yeah, I don't want to highlight. I don't want to highlight this. Go yellow. See, now it's yellow and red. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. Oh, here it is. That's the button I need. Okay, and now one more time for red. Sorry, you guys. Wow. Yeah, I don't know exactly what I did there. I'll have to figure it out another time. Yeah, so put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. So he lists out these things here. You used to walk in these ways, but now you've been brought into a new place. So it says this: rid yourself of things such as anger, rage. So he's still in this negative of things not to do. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off the old self with its practices. You've put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge of the image of its creator. Therefore, as God's chosen people, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness. So this kind of emulates this Galatians 5 mentality here, right? The fruit of the Spirit, with this laundry list of positive things that we are meant to participate in as believers, having been brought into the new self, if you will. So that's kind of where I'm basing some of this out of. Spiritual maturity should be the defining quality and characteristic that makes us look up to someone in the church. Not duration at the church, not, financial influence, not political influence. Those things shouldn't be things that gain us any kind of merit in the church, but rather it should be spiritual maturity that gains us some sort of merit in the church. So this is important. Let's go ahead and we will do note from vault. We'll go, what was that, Colossians 3. So you can see here's, an example of a time that I was studying a scripture and I was researching into it, and just kind of developing all these different things here, tagging it. So yeah, this is super useful. I can recall this knowledge really quickly with Obsidian, which is nice. So I'm going to go, actually not Colossians 3. See, my mouse is just so laggy, so I apologize. I need to figure that out, why OBS makes my mouse laggy. If anyone knows and can help me with that, and comment it down below. So yeah, in case you're joining us, we are working on brainstorming for my second book. This is my first book right here. It's called The Imperfect Church. My name's Nathan LaValle, by the way. I'm an author, business owner, pastor, kind of all these different things. And I'm working on basically educating myself on church health for some callings that I feel like God is leading me into. I'm doing that through book writing. It's kind of my principal form of self-education. So we're working on plotting out this second book. This was the plot on my previous book. I showed this at the beginning of the stream, and this just, you know, we're working to create something like this, a plot map, before we actually start writing the book. So I want to actually tag, I think I can do a link actually. If I go like this, so I can go add card, yeah, and then go, there we go. So we're gonna go Galatians 5, and what is that? I always forget. Is it like 19, I want to say? 22, fruit of the Spirit. Okay. Galatians 5:22. And then as well as, and we'll tag in that Colossians passage here. Go back. Mouse is so laggy. I mean, it's this whole section, right? So 12 through 17. 12 through 17. Colossians 3, 12 through 17. Colossians 12, 3 through 17. Bible linker. I wonder if I can't do Bible linker here. I guess I can't. So we'll just go Colossians 12. Not 12. Colossians 3, 12. And we'll go through 17. At least I have the first tag. Basically, anytime I'm working from that text then, in the future, whether it's for a sermon or a teaching, I'm writing, I'll actually be able to see the backlinks and see every place that I've ever referenced this. So when I'm listening to preaching, oh, what's up, Victor? Thank you so much for dropping a comment. He said, hello, never heard of you until today, but the algorithm suggested you. I'm also writing a Christian novel and I use Obsidian, so I guess I matched multiple aspects. Yes, Victor, thank you so much for joining, bro. I'd love to hear more about your novel. Drop a comment if you can post a link. I don't know if they automatically scrub those, but would love for you to subscribe and just kind of come along for the journey. You probably have a lot of insight you can lend me. This is my first book, so I actually already published one Christian novel. This is my first book. It's called The Imperfect Church, 6 Messages for the Modern Church. It's available on Amazon if you're curious. Also, if you want, you could send me an email or something. I could send you a copy if you don't want to pay the $10 or whatever for it. Would love to get your input and just all your wisdom in the stream, bro. But definitely drop a comment and share with me some of the details of your Christian novel, and I'll plug it here in the stream as well. So yeah, what I like about this is, you know, later down the road. So for example, if I'm looking at that fruit of the Spirit passage, Galatians 5, not comma, and not gout, Galatians 5:22. If I'm looking at this, I can actually search that and see all the places where I've actually referenced that passage, which is just really helpful. I can also see I haven't created that passage yet. If I go to Galatians though, I can see this list of all these different ones that I've referenced previously. If I, whoops, we don't want to do that. Let's go back, and I actually want to delete Galatians 3. Otherwise, it's going to view as something I've worked on. I haven't worked on it yet. So yeah, these are the 2 passages we are going to link into that. I want to make sure I don't lose this reference, or what should be viewed as, again, the word. It's not meritus. It's not like high class or status. for what should be viewed highly. The plugin I'm using right now is called Canvas. It's actually a built-in plugin in Obsidian as of 6 or 7 months ago. No, probably a year ago. So if you go into your settings here, right, and you go to core plugins, you'll actually see this Canvas plugin right here. You have to turn it on, I believe. I don't think it's on by default. And then you can utilize this. I've gone back and forth between this and Excalidraw. I like Excalidraw, but for plot mapping in specific, I like Canvas better. Oh, the Bible plugin? Are you talking about this here? Or are you talking about what I was trying to do with my command palette earlier? I'm actually gonna see if my Bible linker is on. If this is what you're talking about, I use this plugin Bible Linker to help me generate a string of links in my vault. We're getting into nerdy stuff, so if this isn't you, just you can phase out for a minute. If this is what you're talking about, I use Bible Linker. Let me see if I can get it to work over here. So like if I was trying to do, and I actually communicated with the dev of this plugin to get them to kind of help it work for my use case. If I go link, yeah, I just can't do it in Canvas. So I'd go like Galatians, for example, you go 3:1 through 12, basic, and what it's going to do is create all those links from Galatians 3 through 3:12, and that's way better than having to type them all out. Yeah, so you're seeing it in action here, and I use this when I'm doing sermons. So if I'm quoting an entire parable, for example, I want any reference to any verse in that parable to bring me back to the work I've done previously in the sermon. So, you know, especially like we look at Matthew, for example, you know, you're just going to find like a good amount of stuff in Matthew. You know, for example, Matthew 28:20, Great Commission. And then the other thing I'll do sometimes is I'll link to this text, but I'll show the scripture this way. So you can do that. You probably already know about this, but yeah, super helpful, man. Bible Linker. If you are doing in-depth work where you, how do I describe it? Where each verse gets its own note, which I deeply contemplated all the different ways I could do this in my vault. Bible Linker is a godsend, seriously. Yeah. Okay. So I think the premise here, I mean, it's kind of this. This is kind of the premise, but I want to restate it in a simpler way, because if you can't communicate something simply, then you haven't mastered it. So let's bring out a side premise here. 3 hashes to get my blue heading. Any thoughts? If I have a viewer out there, what is kind of the big unifying premise of this point of planning out how a visitor becomes an elder? What is it? It might be, I guess it's kind of related to like a path. Yeah, like how rocky is the path from beginner to expert, which is an oversimplification, right? But how rocky is that path? What's up? If you're just joining, my name's Nathan LaValle. I'm an author. I've published a book. It's a Christian novel, and I'm working on brainstorming for the second one. So if you're joining the stream, that's what we're doing right now. I would love your insights. I'd love you to sit with me for 15 or 20 minutes and just give me your thoughts. I think it has something to do with a path. So I want to, I think I actually want to, let's think a little bit. Left brain, right brain. Let's go like this. How rocky is the path? We're going to make this into an Excalidraw note. Convert markdown note into Excalidraw. And I want to just literally draw a path here. Not that one, this one. So I'm thinking like a path, right? And then you've got rocks and whatnot, kind of like that. And then you maybe got like tree branch in the way. This is super rudimentary, but I want to visualize this well. So like how clear, that's a good word, is the path from completely out of the group, and I'll say congregation, and I'm a terrible speller, so bear with me. How clear is the path from completely out of the group to the highest available role of leadership? That is a great simple premise for this idea. Absolutely. Yes. Victor says there are multiple paths, and I think a healthy church has people who've been on all of them. Absolutely. 100%. And then you say, we have someone who was a former biker drug user and his insight is invaluable. I have zero in that and can't truly provide any help for anyone that's been on that path. Absolutely. 100%. Here, I'm kind of thinking of path maybe a little bit differently than that. But in another way, not differently than that. I'm thinking about, because it ties into what you're saying about path. I'm thinking about once someone begins attending a congregation, and let's say, imagining that person like you're describing from your church who, was a former biker and drug user. I don't know how bad it is to be a biker, but being a drug user is not good. But maybe he was like in a biker gang. Yeah, for that person, right? Maybe they have zero experience in the church. That person is going to feel some obstruction to the path of church leadership because there is going to be so much change that needs to happen before that individual is able to assume a role of like prominent leadership within the church. If we're following scripture in the Bible, what it says about eldership and even deacons, and the requirements for those in Timothy and in Titus and in Ephesians, then, there's going to be some proper obstruction. But I'm talking about, he was a tough, violent man, and he tells us, dude, I have met people like that in my time in ministry. I can tell you that. So I absolutely get what you're talking about there. I've had some people teach story time. I've had some people teach lessons in youth ministry, and I'm just sitting there in the back, like listening to them teach. And we talked about what they're going to be teaching, and just being like, oh my goodness, I hope he doesn't go where I think he's going. Yeah. I remember there was a time when I was in high school where there was a guy who came out and taught, and he actually was terminally ill with cancer. He came out and taught at summer camp. And I remember it was kind of like a big deal because he swore in his lesson like 3 or 4 times. But he was like almost dead. He died a little bit later. And he was someone who was very connected in the community where I grew up. And, just the passion he brought, it looked a little different than the passion that a lot of the rest of us bring. But yeah, absolutely. Like, people like this, if they cannot imagine what it looks like to ascend to a role of leadership in the church, what discipleship needs to take place, what sanctification needs to take place in them, what elements need to change in their life, and if the church isn't engaging in that process, the church is failing at one of its fundamental and critical roles. And they have actually substituted the Word of God for another thing. Because what gives you merit in the church in these types of congregations is this. It's your duration at the church. It is your financial resources. It's your political influence. Maybe how little you stir the boat. And so I want someone like who you're describing, Victor, when they come to church to rightly feel like things need to change, but to really be able to picture and envision the way that the church is going to help them in that pursuit in order to become the person that Christ is leading them to become, so that they can kind of envision themselves in eldership. So this isn't really about elders. This is really about partnering with people who come to your church. And I think small churches tend to do this very, very poorly. Churches that struggle with growth have not typically done a good job of helping new converts, new believers, new members of their church imagine what it's going to look like for them to walk into the direction that the Holy Spirit is leading them in their walk with God. So that's the second point. And I appreciate your insight, Victor. You're helping me kind of think through this and process this with your comments. So incredibly helpful. I thank you so much for being here in the stream. My hope is to do more streaming like this as I work, and even just as I'm writing, to stream some of that process. I like to process things out loud, so this is a good fit for me. For other people, they probably need to just be quiet. But for me, I'm talking out loud anyways, so it's actually good for me to stream it. What do I title this? I titled the last one, Do Few Hard. So, walk with on path, since we're doing caveman talk right now. Yeah, so there's two things. This is good. Let's bite off a third for sure, and then we'll see where that gets us. Let's go this way. I think this one is simpler, a little bit less philosophical. Well, I guess it's just as philosophical, but it's a little bit less like meta. A little bit more concrete, I guess, would be the way to, like, concrete philosophically. So, yeah, eliminating time waste. So, I guess maybe the first thing is there's a picture I have of prayer meetings being incredibly wasteful. So, in the prayer meeting we spend, we spend 2 hours, and an hour and a half of that time maybe would be spent just reviewing the prayer requests. So we have the leaders, and we're just reading through the prayer requests. It almost feels like a gossip session, in a way. Let me see if I can find this video. There was a video I watched a long time ago, but the actual link that I watched was deleted. I'm going to see if I can find it and then play it back here. Because it's Paul Washer, and I'm not a Calvinist. A lot of what he says I do not resonate with, but he also says some stuff that I do resonate with, and he talked specifically about prayer meetings. I think this is a sermon. Okay, let's I'm gonna pause this music. I'm gonna try to show you guys what we're talking about here. I think this might be it.
When you see someone who seems to be given to prayer and the study of God's word, don't buy into the lie that they do that because it's easy for them, that they have a special gift. When I woke up from whatever I was, coma or whatever I was in after my heart attack.
That's not it. It must be a part of this sermon here. I saw a smaller, shorter clip. But
be seated. I kind of feel in a way like John Wesley, who was riding along on his horse, and he
let me kind of just give the overview. I don't think I'm going to be able to find the clip. Paul Washer talks about this very idea that prayer meetings should be filled with prayer, not discussion of prayer requests. And so in this meeting that we have at church, how are we really utilizing the time? Because we could spend 2 hours with an hour and a half of basically gossiping about the prayer requests, and then 30 minutes of going around and just hitting each one of them once. Or we can have someone lead a prayer in the beginning and everyone to be praying that, and then to separate and have each person praying individually for a time, and then coming back together and praying and seeing if there's any insights that God is giving in the prayer, like the Holy Spirit interacting with us it could be very different. So these meetings tend to be very wasteful. I find that churches actually that are small, one of the hurdles that they haven't figured out, that maybe bigger and churches that are unhealthy in other ways have figured out, is how to optimize meetings. Either that, or the churches that are bigger. I was a part of one of these churches. They just have the money to waste time. They have the financial resources to waste time, or they have the people to waste time. A small church doesn't have that. Resources need to be used efficiently. So when we are utilizing, let me turn the music back on here. When we are utilizing, meetings poorly, I think this tends to be something that really, really messes up a church's, young days, if you will, the days that they are working on growing and just accumulating membership. Let me close this down here, because anytime I click on one Safari, the wonders of Mac, it opens up the other Safaris too. Okay, yeah, so let's think about this here. So, kind of the negative portraits here, and I guess I probably should, yeah, I'll do it better this time. So, negative portraits would be, yeah, you'd say like a 50-hour work week gets shrunk to a 35-hour, let's even say 30-hour work week. Music's a bit loud. Thank you. Let's turn that down here. Tell me if that's better. Harder to hear me? Tell me if it's better now. I've turned it down a little bit. It's kind of difficult to get, kind of the exact right balance for that. Yeah, so like a 50-hour work week gets shrunk to a 30-hour work week from meetings that accomplish little. I have been a part of so much time waste in ministry through meetings. Is it better now, Brianna? Yeah, so like think about it this way. Let's say you have a committee and you're meeting, let's say one of the things, let's say you've abided by this other concept of focusing on one or two things with all your effort. And one of the things that you're focusing on is children's ministry. So you have a committee, turn it down a tad more. Okay, yeah. So let's say you have a committee that's going to essentially be leading this effort. They're going to basically make up a leadership body to help with, the guidance, the staffing, the distribution of resources with this section of ministry. And let's say, in that meeting, you have 6 agenda items. We have to figure this out, this out, this out, this out, this out, and the 6th thing out. The way that a meeting can just devolve into time waste is we sit for 2.5 hours and we just go around the circle and everyone can talk, and we kind of see if we form some odd loose consensus. No one's really the leader. The person who should be the leader isn't really leading, or maybe they're over leading and they're just saying this is what it needs to be. Maybe the group thinks something else. And so, basically in this time when all of us are here, we're just going to hash this out. Very few things actually have to be handled that way in church world. It's probably likely that in a similar situation, when you have these 6 agenda items, 5 of the 6 could be delegated to a leader, one of the people in this committee, to take a stab at it and bring back their work and then present on that work and see if there's anything that really needs to change. Again, setting a good expectation that we're not going for perfect here. So when that person brings something back, it's not, is this perfect? That's not the bar. It's, is this within mission? Is this heading in the right direction? Is there something that really needs to change, or is it okay? So maybe 5 of the 6 things you can end up delegating away. One of the things needs to be hashed out. Maybe it's a bigger philosophical thing. And so we're going to say, Okay, we have 5 items. I need a volunteer to take the lead of each of these 5 items. And maybe I'm the committee leader. I'm willing to take the lead on whichever one no one else wants to. Because there's some work that's going to need to be done in planning, laying out a schedule, a timeline, whatever. So what we're looking for is someone to take the lead, dedicate time to working on that, and then bringing that back to the next meeting so that it can be presented to the group and any insights can be added. There can be another revision process. They can bring it back, and then we go, does anything really need to change? If not, let's just go. Like, let's do it. Let's talk about it less and do it more. So you get those 5 things, and then at the end, it's like, we have one more thing we do have to hash out here together as a group. So I have in churches probably, if I had to estimate this out, and let's just do it like this. I'm going to actually go halfsies with the screen here, and I'm going to put a calculator right here. I've worked in ministry for 8 years. For each of those years, I've had approximately 50 weeks per year of work. For those weeks, I probably worked on average 55 hours per week in ministry. And so I spent 22,000 hours doing ministry work. I would say on average, I don't want to be exaggerative. Maybe just under a full day each week would be spent on meetings that were like this. So you might say, let's just say 10%. So times 0.1. So over the course of 8 years in ministry, 2,200 hours in meetings. Conservative estimate. Those meetings could have been half as long. Easy. Like probably less than that. So divide it by 2. And, you're looking at in an 8-year amount of time in ministry, if just meetings had been run better and been run with purpose and efficiency. And honestly, it's probably more than this. 1,100 hours. I estimate this book that I wrote took me 800 hours to write. This is like a serious work, like a legit book that, as I was writing it, formed me into a much more knowledgeable and wise pastor. Like deep work, very, very helpful. Could have been done, and that just meeting waste. Everything that those meetings had to accomplish still would have been accomplished. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. So 50-hour work weeks get shrunk down. We'll use that same time estimate to like we'll just say 40-hour week from meetings that accomplish little. Other elements of time waste. I think meetings is the biggest one, but I would also say gossiping. And I've been a part to this. I can't claim exemption here, but there have been times where, maybe I should expand this and say gossiping / sharing. Gossiping / sharing updates. And I'll confess, I have not been perfect on this at all. Not at all. I think the meetings thing I've been better at when I've led meetings, but this, coming in and sitting down with another staff person and saying, I had this interaction with so-and-so, that's pretty crazy, huh? And just kind of going back and forth, that's more time that it doesn't need to be spent. Even with sharing updates, I understand, you come back from maybe a big youth retreat and you need to tell the story of what happened because an amazing thing took place. I get that. That makes good sense to me. But just coming in and sharing kind of all the positives that you've been experiencing in your role. Why? What's the point? I'm pro celebrating, but I think it kind of gets into a place of like, I just want to talk about something and I don't want to work. Like, I don't want to get to work for ministry. I just don't think this is what was happening in the early church. I think that my picture that I get when I'm studying the book of Acts is a far, 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 far more intentional, more worker driven, like working, hard work concept. Gossiping. Now, other time waste, we're just shrinking up our time resources. Maybe you can think of something. If you're in the stream, what are major ways that churches waste time? Time wasters. I don't know. I can't think of something. I'm going to put this here so that I have a spot. I feel like I need some more examples, especially when I write this section of the book. If this does end up becoming a section, I'm going to want that. We're going to group this together this time like that. This is going to be negative traits. Negative traits. Setting up and tearing down chairs and tables. Oh, man. Yeah. That felt personal, babe. That's my wife, by the way. That felt personal because I set up and tear down every Sunday right now in ministry. So, I mean, I get it. I feel like sometimes stuff just has to be set up, though, and torn down, you know? But, yeah, I would rather not do that. You made me laugh. So this, yeah, right here. I'm going to put it in. All right. There you go, Bree. Bree left her mark. I'm even going to put hashtag Bree. Other people should do that, though. Okay. I'm going Bree. I just want to make sure you have credit, you know, especially in the book, that when I talk about that they know it was you. Everyone needs to know. Everyone's got to know that it was you, babe. Other people should do that, though. You're saying you think the pastor shouldn't, you think the staff shouldn't be doing setup. I've always kind of said, if I can do the setting up and the tearing down so that I can free up my volunteers to do more ministry, then I'll do it. Because I don't mind popping in AirPods and listening to a book. Man, I can't get it centered. That's frustrating. I don't mind listening to a book while I, you know, set up tables or something. Or like listening to a podcast or even calling someone and visiting with them. Someone's got to do it. Jesus would have done it probably. I mean, he tore down Matthew 21, right? Now, we need a premise concept here. Let others who want to do that do it. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to make sure that okay, hold on. I'm screenshotting what you're saying because it's cracking me up. Yeah, I'm going to put this in here. You're making me laugh. Who wants to do this? No one wants to no one wants to set up or tear down. No one's like, man, God is calling me to set up chairs and tables every week for our youth ministry. I just think, you know, there's certain things that no one wants to do, but that someone has to do. That's kind of how I feel about it. And, you know, I think ideally it's something that we all work together on, right? Like, it doesn't have to just be the pastor doing it. I think oftentimes, and maybe that's the truth. I'm going to put this in here. You just wait. I think maybe that's honestly the truth, is that these things end up getting left to the pastor. It's kind of like it falls back on him, or it falls back on some staff person. And like, why is it falling back on him? Now, likewise, I think there's probably a lot of pastors that don't do a good job of delegating in these places, in these ways. So watch this. We're going to go like that. We're going to go add note from vault. And look what I have. I have Bree's funny comment right here. Perfect. Because this makes me laugh. So we got Bree's funny comment here. Thank you for that. I'm just going to put that there. And yeah, I mean, the concept, I guess, if you're trying to do a premise on this, is eliminate unnecessary time waste. Let's try this again. Eliminate unnecessary time wasting. But I feel like that's very similar to my original kind of statement here. So let's say it a little differently. You can always find more money. It's interesting, like, I think there's probably some sort of a work that needs to be done in my brain about these three different resources. Maybe I'll do that here a little bit. So, like, time. If I had to summarize time, it's a fixed resource. It's completely logged. On the flip side, energy is, I mean, I don't know what the parallel is, but it's an energy that it almost like magnetizes to the ends. So if we were to do that, how energy as a resource magnetizes to the ends. We're going to create just a quick little Excala drawing here. And we've got, you know, this. Let's say it's called energy. I'm going to make that a lot bigger in a different font. Let's do that font. So we've got energy. And then we've kind of got like this hash point in the middle. I don't think that's straight. It's the command for making something straight again. Oh, maybe it's good enough. So down here you have out of energy. I'm going to make that smaller. And then up here you have full of energy. This is just how my brain works. I kind of visualize something and then I need to create that visualization. And then, you know, you could say let's do, I need like an image of a magnet here. I'm gonna bring you guys here so you can look at my face. Actually, I'll go over to the side so we can stay on the screen. So I'm gonna try to find a magnet cartoon PNG. So I'm just looking on Google, trying to find a very simple magnet image. that I can use. It used to be easier to find an actual PNG. We'll go like that. Okay. There we go. Nice. That's exactly what I wanted. We're gonna make it a lot smaller though. So I kind of picture there's this magnet here, and then there's also a magnet right here. And each of these kind of, let's get a yellow. I guess I don't have a yellow. Let's make it yellow. Oh, that's not yellow. That's brown. Let's... How do I... I guess we'll just go with white. I don't want to waste time on that. So there's like this magnetic pole on each side. And then let's go like this. Just to make this make more sense to me, we'll make that blue. We'll make that red. Or rather, we'll make this green over here. So energy is like this thing where, you know, if you're here on the right side of energy, where this is, and you lose some energy, it kind of snaps back. When you have really high energy, it's hard to pull that down. There's almost an inertia that, and that's not quite the right word, but there's this inertia of sorts that keeps you at the polar ends. Likewise, when you're down here and you have low energy, it is almost impossible to get out of that state. So I want to actually link this in here like that. We're going to link this in. Energy. So energy magnetizes to the ends, and then we'll put C diagram. Hey, if you are just joining me, my name's Nathan LaValle. I'm an author. You can buy my book on Amazon. It's called The Imperfect Church. It is right here. And it's a novel. It's about church and how to have a healthy church. And I'm working on my second book right now. That's what you're a part of and you're watching. So would love for you to drop a comment, introduce yourself so I can say hey to you. And yeah, help me too. If you have any thoughts or ideas as I'm writing or talking, that would be much appreciated. And then finally, we have money, which money is, you know, there's probably intricacies with money that I don't quite understand because I'm not really a money person in a way. Let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. I'm not really a money person in some ways. So, but I think money is an abundant resource. Money almost more reflects people's buy-in than anything else. When people are really bought in, they give. In the church. So you kind of have these resources, right? And the thing here is that since time is such a fixed resource, it's not like energy or money. Money, you would say, okay, we're low on money, find more. Energy, you'd say we're low on energy, let's create a campaign to fix that problem so that we don't have to continuously fix it. We get to a state of having high energy as a congregation. You know, we don't have to worry about this anymore. Time, the only way to gain more time is to ruthlessly and brutally eliminate time waste, which makes this point of, you know, eliminating time waste. That's why we're focusing in on this specific resource it's completely fixed. So time is precious is what I'm going to call this. So I think I'm getting to a place where, you know, these conceptualizations are really going to help me when it comes time to start actually plot mapping this thing out. Yeah. All right, so we've already built out 3 of these, and I think we are going to call it for the day. You can see we started with this, doing a few things hard, walking with, and I'll actually rename this. I think I'd like more for it to be alongside, not with. Alongside, on path. That's clearer language. And then time is precious. So next time, when I stream, we are going to go with this. So these 5 ideas here: 0 tolerance for bad behavior. Are there idols keeping you? This one is not finished yet, so I'm gonna I stopped in the middle of actually working on that one. So yeah, 0 tolerance for bad behavior, starting on the right and going top down. Don't buy hospice, buy chemo. 10 years of making a stifling budget versus 1 year of really going for it. I think this maybe ties into this do few things hard. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does. So I'm actually going to move this up here like that. We'll attach that in next time. And then this idea that bad church culture oftentimes needs to die. When a church has really bad culture, and it's interesting, there's actually stories about this. I'll try not to talk about this too much so we can work on it next time. But, you know, when a church is dwindling in membership, let's say there's 10 people left and they can't sustain, they have a building, they have resources and money, but, I mean, the church is dying out. It does not work, usually, to do a merger with a growing and new church that is establishing healthy culture. And the reason for that, church planners recognize this phenomenon. The reason for that is that those people who have been at that church for so long that has an established culture, there is a reason the church is dying, and the culture must die with the church. Like, the death of the church is coming for a reason, and it should come. And so the times that church plants have managed to do this successfully is when they communicate to those previous people, this church is gone. This congregation is dying. It's dead. All the cultural pieces dead with it. But you are invited to be a part of this new congregation that is going to be taking place in the same place that the previous congregation was. So oftentimes with some of these other pieces, and I think that's where, you know, I don't know where in the book this goes. Maybe it makes sense to be a kind of capstone piece. I'm a bad speller, remember that. Maybe it makes sense to be a capstone piece, right? This is where, you know, we'll need to do some more intimate plotting once I kind of conceptualize these ideas. And then finally, are there idols keeping you from fixing your eyes on God? Grind them up. We'll talk about those and then maybe try to finish this idea right here. Sorry, I had it on the wrong screen. Maybe try to finish this idea next time. So these yellow ones we'll work on in the next video, the next live stream. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you're one of the 4 people who are viewing the stream right now, I so deeply appreciate you being here and kind of just walking alongside and following the journey. Yeah, my hope is to pretty much live stream most of the process of writing this book and getting it going. And, you know, there will be opportunities for you to help, for you to kind of see the process. And, man, I just feel like God has some great things in store for, I mean, I'll just say it, for me, for his church, and that this needs to be an opportunity for me to educate myself on this stuff because, man, I feel like God has put some big dreams on my heart for working with churches with regards to health, creating some very, very powerful tools for them. but it has to start by equipping myself, by educating myself. And I just think the best way to do that is to teach on it, to write on it. So that's what this is going to be, guys. Thank you so much. Victor, it was great engaging with you. Bree, thank you for your comments. And yeah, I'm going to try to stream most evenings. So just keep an eye out, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.